Upcoming, we are going to have our stakeholder panel. We're going to start with Steve because he needs to get going to another meeting. So let me introduce, let me find your introduction, there we go. Steve Buschang. Steve Buschang has 25+ years of experience working in the environmental sector along the Texas coast. He serves as the Director of Research and Development and State Scientific Support Coordinator for the GLO. Steve currently serves on the Science Advisory Panel for the Coastal Response Research Center, the Board of Directors for the Gulf of Mexico Coastal Ocean Observing System, and the Nexus JET, and the Planning Board for Clean Gulf Conferences, and as the Science and Tech Chair for the Regional Response Team 6. So he's got a lot going on, and we'd love to hear more about your involvement in GoMRI. So
okay, Danny, thank you for the introduction, and thank you for your presentation just a moment ago. That kind of helped me out. It's going to probably speed me up along because I was going to throw a lot of accolades toward you and the Sea Grant team for all that you do for me here. So as Danny mentioned, I am the State Scientific Support Coordinator, and I direct a research and development program for our oil spill program here at the Texas General Land Office. Danny, you want to go to the next slide? The Land Office, extremely briefly, there is a lot of components to it. We are the oldest state agency in the state of Texas, but I'm going to focus primarily on our oil spill program because that's kind of where we are all mostly interested in today, but also on our coastal management and our coastal grants programs, which all have nexus to a lot of the GoMRI initiatives and GOMA initiatives that a lot of people have talked about. As you can see from the different program areas underneath these headings, things like the natural resource damage assessment, environmental protections, coastal resources, and those type of things. They rely on a lot of the data, though it may have been acquired through the work done under GoMRI for particularly oil spill research. They use a lot of that same information for a lot of the programs that they work on. The grants programs, particularly the last, the CMP, the Coastal Management Program, and the GOMESA grants, these are actually doing a really good job of extending some of the research that GoMRI actually began. Just a plug-in for them. So again, I'm going to focus on what I do here and what we do with the Oil Spill Prevention and Response Program. If you want to go to the next slide real quick. So there are we have, if you're not fully aware of what it is, we have 5 field offices up and down the coast that, very similar to the U.S. Coast Guard, we respond 24/7 to oil spills. And ever since we came about in 1991, just post the Ixtoc well, which a lot of people have already talked about today. So as you can well imagine, we get a lot of interactions with the public out there. So my first thing I would like to do is throw out the kudos to the Sea Grant folks. You know, particularly Danny, what she does here for us in Texas, and before her it was Chris Hale. These folks answer a lot of the questions that our folks in the field that are dealing with the general public come up with every day. The publications, the bulletins, those type of things, our responders in the field carry those with them. So they have really good materials that we don't have to spend a whole lot of time doing. We know that they've been done well, and so it just really helps us out a lot. The other thing that I do with the Texas, with the oil spill program, is I have to actually educate my team in the field. So we are primarily a spill response organization, but at the same time, we need to know. I noticed in the chat box, a lot of people were asking questions about the dispersants. And I try to keep up as much as I can with all the research that is going on. But everyone needs to know that when an oil spill actually happens, there are decisions to be made. You already got a bad situation, and now you got to make decisions on what you're going to do. Are you going to use some sort of a chemical countermeasure? Are you going to do in-situ burning, something along those lines? That's why we relied so much on the science that came out of the GoMRI initiative. And the way we get a lot of this stuff is the GOMOSIS conferences. We get it through a number of different venues, but we've been active in the GOMOSIS conference since the onset. The last couple of years, I've actually been the developer of a couple of different sessions, particularly in 2019, the research priorities, trying to develop, fixing the gaps in between those. That was a really big one that there was so much information, so much good research coming out of the GoMRI initiatives, but how to actually bring this into the response end. We had one of the best crowds in the whole conference at that one. And I can't say enough about the GoMRI conferences. I'm sad that those are starting to come to an end, but I think the all hands conference, the GoMRI, I think the initiative is going to be bringing these together as a one conference. I'm looking forward to those. I think Chuck talked about actually a couple of people have talked about the GoMRI synthesis program of the 8 core areas. And I've been lucky enough to be invited into the Core 7 initiative, the integration linked modeling systems. We've worked through that. As people have mentioned, that document is available. Also wanted to put a plug in, so a number of the folks on this Core 7 initiative actually published a paper that's coming out this month in the Journal of Marine Science. So keep your eyes peeled for that one. And I reached out to the folks I mentioned earlier, the coastal management folks and our coastal grants folks. And though this is a GOMA initiative, I think they said that there was a nexus to the GoMRI folks in the current version that is about to come out of the Homeowners Handbook for Coastal and Natural Hazards. So I don't know a whole lot about that, but if you're interested in that, I can get you that information, and I would be happy to help. I think that's it for my slides. If you go to the next one. I apologize. I think we only had about 5 to 10 minutes each, so I ran through those. I didn't have all the pretty pictures that a lot of other folks had, but I hope that you got something out of it. And if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me at the Texas General Land Office. I appreciate it.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Steve. I appreciate your time and being able to stay on a few extra minutes. I know you've got another meeting to head off to. So thank you. Next up, we have Dr. Gibeaut. Dr. Gibeaut is the director of the Gulf of Mexico Research Initiative Information and Data Cooperative, so GridC, and the endowed chair for coastal and marine geospatial sciences at the Hart Research Institute. He is a coastal geologist who uses optical, radar, and LiDAR remote sensing, GIS, and field surveys to measure and understand coastal change. So we've heard some great introductions in GridC, and we're excited to hear more.
Yes, thank you, Danny, and hello, everyone. It's great to always talk about GridC. Danny gave the full title of GridC, Gulf of Mexico Research Initiative, Information and Data Cooperative. Always put an emphasis on the cooperative because GoMRI did a really amazing thing here. Well, they've done many amazing things, but one of the things that I'm going to talk about today is how GoMRI handled the data and making the data public, sharing the data, as well as making sure the data are preserved for future ongoing discoveries and comparisons with new research that will continue on. And so that's what I'll talk about. I'll talk about the system a little bit, the program that we put together, how GoMRI did this, and really emphasize that also that we'll be going forward in time. This is a legacy. GridC is a legacy of GoMRI that will continue on and is already serving more data sets and more programs that are not GoMRI funded. So it's not just for GoMRI, but for Texas and the Gulf of Mexico wide. One of the things that was really key to what GoMRI accomplished here is to, through GridC, is to enhance this data sharing culture, to advance the data sharing culture. When we started out back in 2010, 2011, it wasn't always the case that scientists would readily share their data and share it early in the process. But the leadership at GoMRI really put it out there and got out there on the leading edge of the data sharing movement that we have worldwide now, open data. And we also have a lot of students, a lot of graduate students that have been trained and know how to and what the expectations are with sharing data. So GridC was established in July of 2011 by GoMRI to implement this strict and challenging data sharing requirement that the program has. And it's housed at the Heart Research Institute at Texas A&M Corpus Christi. And the focus of the GoMRI repository has been on data from distinct scientific research studies, like what GoMRI has funded over the years, and creating ultimately a citable data set package so that you can perhaps, as a scientist, not just publish the papers and have those cited, but also you can have a citation of a data set that you created, turning the data set into a Class A research product, just like the papers itself. And that will help track how the data are used as well if people start citing these data sets. And so we're talking about open data, and open data is simply a data that anyone can access, use, or share. And the way that you get to that point, though, have effective open data is through applying fair data principles. And this means the data need to be findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable. And I won't go through exactly what each of those things, they're somewhat intuitive, but in light of the time, I'll move on here. But I say, though, that GridC abides by these fair data principles, which are a ground up type of movement now, and is widely recognized that to effectively share data and preserve data, you need to apply by fair data principles. And this is what GridC is doing. So why share data in the first place? Well, these are some reasons for more resource management purposes. There's a lot of different reasons to share data, but I just picked out a few here that particularly speak to advancing resource management. And first, to collect a baseline of data. Many data sets related in time and place cannot be reproduced. And so you need to save those baseline conditions, particularly if they're field data, so that they can be compared later on. Need to increase efficiency through sharing data. And this is to reduce redundancy, get an economy of scale. If you know what's been collected or what's being collected, maybe you could adjust your research. And take advantage of complementary measurements as well. And then transparency is very important these days. Data are used for public policy considerations, and we need to share that data and have it out front to increase the public trust. And think of the climate change politics that we often face. We really need to make the data public. Improve environmental planning and permitting. Data need to be available to business, to improve business efficiency and the economic activities and everyone's activities along the coastal environments and marine environment. And some examples of this in Texas are the resource management codes. And science, as I mentioned, is used to inform policy. Therefore, you really should have open data, available to everyone. I'm thinking now of the recent beginnings of the Texas oyster fishery and the rules that are being developed to conduct that activity. Enable citizen scientists, and of course enable new discoveries. And overall, there's a bigger reason in that it doesn't, particularly in the case of publicly funded research, it belongs to the public, and so it should be public data. And of course, GoMRI was not a public research program; it's a private research program. But the GoMRI program has really pushed the envelope here into the open data realm. Next, please. So I'll just real quickly, GridC is not just a repository. It's not just a big computer disk or cloud storage or anything like that. It is partly that, but that's just part of it. GridC, we start out by training and creating user guides and conducting webinars and workshops and working one-on-one with scientists who may not have shared data before and just need to know some of the ins and outs of how things go. Can you go back real quick? And then we help them plan. We help them create data management plans and start to collect initial information about the data that they're going to collect so that we're ready. And then, of course, you submit the data, and then we review the data package. And then we create this citable data package with digital object identifiers assigned, a very important step in this whole process. And then distributing. We need to make the data discoverable, findable. And we do that on GridC. We're also a member node of Data One. You can find all our data sets through Google Dataset Search. And we also copy data into NCEI. And so GridC serves the data lifecycle. It's not just a big storage, but it's a program where our overall goal is to really enhance the data sharing, the effective data sharing culture in the Gulf of Mexico. And some of these numbers here, this is a recent screen grab of our website. You can see that these are mostly, almost all GoMRI data, but not all at this point. And the types of data that GridC will handle is all over the place. So it's not a specialized database. It has a focus on the Gulf of Mexico, and it involves all of these coastal and marine related types of data. And here's one example of a data set landing page from the GridC website. And this happens to be from a data set that Atomex published on the site. And I believe Antoinette Quigg is part of this, and Alicia Williams. And so this is a data set that you can go and find, and it has to do with nutrients and how the microbial community responded to a spill in Texas, the Texas City Y spill on March of 2014. And you can get a link to the paper that was published from this data set, but you can also get the actual data and see just what they were working with, and perhaps apply it in other ways too. And here's a non-GoMRI data set. It's actually was developed from the Hart Research Institute, and the paper was just published on this in PLOS One. And it's related to how red tide has changed over the last 50, 60, 70 years or so. And you can go and see all the information that they were dealing with that they were working with in producing the paper, the published paper that they have. And again, perhaps you could add to it, add to the time series, or you could look at it in a different way. So those are just two examples. And one, I want to point out that GridC is because of GoMRI, but GridC is not just for GoMRI now, as you saw in that one Heart Research Institute publication. And other GridC users include the Restore Centers of Excellence for Florida, Mississippi, and Texas. All the data from the research that those programs produce are being served by GoMRI, as well as their researchers are being served by GoMRI also with that training and data management planning that I spoke of and tracking. A NOAA Cooperative Science Center called the Center for Coastal and Marine Ecosystems. This is a student-oriented program, research and educational program. We're handling those data. Individually funded researchers approach us, and some of those data sets are in GridC. The Heart Research Institute is working on putting all their data sets into GridC. And very importantly, the Gulf Research Program, which is another Gulf-wide research program ran by the National Academies of Sciences, Engineering, and Medicine, is using GridC much the same as GoMRI. Use GridC and for the reasons that GridC was developed in the first place. And this is a web shot of the GridC webpage for the Gulf of Mexico Research Program. So we developed a GRP page for them and for their various programs. However, it still is integrated into all of the GridC data. So if they want to just work with their own program data, this is where they can come, but all their data are also integrated within the rest of the database. And so finally, my last slide, which I'll repeat again, is that this concept again, that HRI is establishing GridC as a GoMRI Legacy program. It's a tremendous legacy for GoMRI, and will continue to advance effective data sharing and preservation of scientific data from the Gulf of Mexico. And HRI is very much behind this effort, and we have our other partners out there as well with the Centers of Excellence and the National Academies, and we are developing other partnerships too. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much. It's great to hear about the legacy of GridC, and we're looking forward for all the other legacies coming up. So we are running a little late on time. So if you do have any questions for our past two panelists or our next, Mr. Wood, please just type them in the chat box, and I will follow up with an email and answer as many of them as I possibly can. So next, we have Mr. Wood. Tony is the director of the National Spill Control School at Texas A&M University in Corpus Christi. Mr. Wood brings a background of more than 30 years of experience in hazardous waste, environmental sustainability, and environmental business development. By providing students with the opportunity to work with the latest oil spill equipment, he is building a strong network that stands ready to save our resources from potential danger. So with that, I will let you get started.
Thank you, Danny. I want to also give a great deal of thanks to all of the presenters that have come before me today. Every single one of them has given me things to think about and to share with my audiences. I do want to point out that we share a parking lot with well, share a building with you and share a parking lot with Hart Research Institute there at the Texas A&M University Corpus Christi campus. But the Spill Control School, the National Spill Control School, has been there for since 1977. And we have a variety of programs that we offer related to oil spill response training. We, until this year, have prided ourselves in a great deal of hands-on training, and have been able to just in the last 2 months have been presenting webinars to discuss oil spill response theory. And we hope to resume our oil spill drills and exercise classes in the very near future, COVID issues notwithstanding. The kind of science that the presenters earlier today, all of the GoMRI researchers have done over the last 10 years are the kind of things that we take often after it's been massaged and developed into more available for the public kind of resources. The PowerPoints that you guys develop, the videos, the journey to planet Earth, the dispatches from the Gulf, are something we use in just about every oil spill class. And those are the kind of things that we can make useful. Danny, go on to the next slide, please. You know, we've been around for a while. We've trained a lot of folks. Now, the difference, I think, between other presentations today, including those that we're talking about outreach and that kind of thing, is many of you are reaching academic students. About half of our students are college students. The other half are industry, government. We've got people from the Coast Guard. We do training twice a year up at the OMSET facility in New Jersey, except for this year, of course. And we have people that come in for training from around the world. We've literally trained people in 14 countries in every continent on the planet, including Antarctica, that, you know, they get the training in Corpus and then they go to Antarctica for 6 months. Go ahead, Danny. I'm going to try to keep this moving pretty fast. We do have a wide variety of courses. One of the things I'd like to stress is that our HAZWOPER courses, as outlined in OSHA's publication 3172, mandate that emergency responders for oil spill response by law are required to have training. And we provide that kind of training when it comes to oil spill response. So the science that you guys are developing, the presentations, the PowerPoint slides, those are the kind of things that we get out to an audience that's not just doing this because they've got to study at the school. These are the folks that are out there working with refineries and chem plants and pipelines and railroads that we share our training with, including things like SCAT, Shoreline Cleanup Assessment Team activities. And Steve was mentioning NERDA. A couple of the other presenters mentioned NERDA, Natural Resource Damage Assessments. That's a part of our training. We have some very clear mantras that we like to follow. My first slide was talking about our mission is both to train and to do research, but a lot of the things that we like to focus on in our training, number one is hands-on, but then we've got a few cliches that we like to drill into people's heads, and that is prevention is always better than response. And it sounds like a cliche, but when I'm working with oil spill workers and refinery operators, when they hear that if you spill 4 gallons of diesel fuel into the Corpus Christi ship channel, it's going to cost you $80,000, it gives them a different perspective. Do no more harm than good. We heard a lot today about some of the things that can damage a coastal or estuarine ecosystem, even the offshore ecosystems. It's important to look at, what is the long-term effect? One thing I didn't hear mentioned today was the outflow of fresh water over the Atchafalaya during Deepwater Horizon that wound up doing some harm to the oyster reefs and so forth off of coastal Louisiana. And we like to focus on efficient recolonization. And that's some of that academic research that I heard about earlier today, and I've heard about for years now, has actually been things that have focused on what went wrong. And what we like to focus on is okay, this is what went wrong. How can we make it so our response is better next time? This is really talking about how we support GoMRI research. We really believe in everything you guys are doing. And the other side of that is that outside of our classroom door at the university, we've got a rack of the oil spill science brochures that Danny keeps us in good supply with. And we like to use the videos that have emanated from these programs. I should also mention that after the presentation today, we've had a lot of good presentations, but I do want to mention that we've also benefited from BP giving us about $500,000 worth of equipment after the spill was wrapped up in the Gulf. So I think somebody just put out the electronic shepherd's hook here. So we are located in an ideal location. It is the largest petroleum exporting port in the United States. Corpus Christi is. We have Coast Guard. We have 3 Coast Guard stations. We've got 4 oil spill response organizations locally, and we do have good synergies with all of those industrial operations. And it's a different kind of outreach than many of the other presenters have talked about today. We reach not only the oil field workers and the oil industry workers, but we also reach a lot of fishermen and folks like that. Go ahead, Danny. That may be okay. Yeah, that was the last slide. Are there any questions? Well, I'll just leave it to you guys to wrap it up, Danny. That'll work.
Well, thank you, Tony. I appreciate it. Apologies for any of the rushing the last minute. Thank you guys for staying with us this long. We have a few wrap-up comments from Dr. Plotkin. And thank you, everyone, for all of your comments and questions in the chat box. If you have more, please put them in there, and I will be sending out an email with this recording and answer all of those questions. So thank you so much for sticking with us, and really appreciate it. So I'll turn it over to Pam.